Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pierce. This is a Ukraine war, a geopolitical news live stream. It depends how long I waffle on as to how much we get through. What a whole section on American politics that is tangential to the topic at hand. But I might have to turn that into a separate video. In fact, I've got about 3 videos worth of separate US stuff to talk about at some point, but I never seem to find the time. Anyway, I hope you are all well out there in the live chat. Welcome. Lots to talk about, lots going on around the world, as there always is, but it seems to be that so much more is happening right now in global geopolitics than I've ever thought before. Okay, let's go to the sources I have to talk to you about these different topics. I am now going to make myself small. Ta-da! Right. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share on all those sorts of things. I would appreciate that. Muchas gracias. Okay, now let's go to where we're going to start. Polish jets have intercepted a Russian reconnaissance plane for the second time this week. Absolutely. Well, they just love to provoke, to prod, to push the envelope, the Russians. The Russian plane flying without a filed flight plan, again, and with its transponder turned off, again, did not violate Polish airspace and was escorted out of the zone of responsibility, according to Poland's military. They'll keep doing that ad infinitum, I imagine. Then we have this sort of thing I would talk about in my military aid video, but I thought I'd throw this one in here tonight because there are some geopolitical implications to this. Swedish defense company Saab is considering Canada as a potential location to assemble Gripen fighter jets. So there is a factory in Brazil where they make Gripens. In fact, they are going to ramp up production in both, I believe, Brazil and Sweden to try and get these Gripens built for the Ukrainians. Also, the Canadians are interested in Gripens to replace at least some of the F-35s they said they were going to buy from the United States. The United States has basically just stopped doing trade negotiations with Canada and is ramping up tariffs. So Canada are going to want to only, I would have thought, they have their own military strategy to adhere to, of course. And F-35s might play a role there, and so it might be a case of they definitely need to buy, is it 16 or 18 of them at least? But they were originally going to buy, I think, 88, something like that. And so there is a really big scope for them to stick 2 fingers up to the Americans and buy Gripen instead. It might work as a better plane given the conditions that they would be used in arguably in Canada, much more aligned to how the Gripens were designed by the Swedes. Now, if they are considering Canada as a potential location to assemble Gripen fighter jets, that would be if the Canadians were buying them. So that decision is on the table. That's going to act as a sweetener for the Canadians. And you could imagine the Canadians deciding to buy Gripen instead of buying the F-35. So, or at least some of the F-35. They contractually, I think, have to buy a minimum amount. The company is looking at ways to expand production capacity both in Canada and in Europe. So one of the other options is obviously building a plant in Ukraine, but that comes not with just a few challenges we can guess. So we're going to go to the US just for a bit here before we return again. When the Kremlin was asked about American efforts to get countries to stop buying Russian oil, they said they offer a quality product at a good price. I beg to differ, says Senator Lindsey Graham. The product Russia offers and the revenue they receive fuels Putin's ability to kill innocent Ukrainians and perpetuates a bloodbath in Ukraine. Buying Russian oil is not a good business deal if it is funding terrorism, death, and destruction. It is. To Hungary, Turkey, and Slovakia. So why I mentioned this tweet from Lindsey Graham is because he is taking aim at nations that are otherwise very friendly to not so much the United States, but their leaders are very friendly with Donald Trump. So you got Hungary, Viktor Orban, Turkey, Recep Erdogan, and Slovakia, Robert Fico. these three strongmen leaders are thick as thieves with Donald Trump. So interesting that Lindsey Graham picks on these and says to Hungary, Turkey, and Slovakia, if you think we're not watching your efforts to undercut US sanctions on Russian oil, you are mistaken. So that is a pretty bold bit of rhetoric, but Graham's good at rhetoric. Action seems to be determined by Trump. Now, India partners with a sanctioned Russian firm to produce passenger aircraft. India's state-owned Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, HAL, has signed a deal with Russia's United Aircraft Corporation, a UAC, in Moscow on October the 27th to jointly produce the SJ-100 civil passenger aircraft. I don't know how this can work because surely they are sanctioned. India partners with sanctioned Russian firm to produce passenger aircraft. It seems to me a fairly insane thing. Sorry, I was had my mind elsewhere on the live chat there. It just seems I don't know how this can happen other than India just saying, well, screw you, we don't care, we don't give a damn about these sanctions, but then India paying at least some lip service to adhering to sanctions with regard to Russian oil. So yeah, it seems quite bizarre, especially given this. HPCL, Mittal Energy of India, claims to have stopped buying Russian crude oil, according to the Financial Times. Earlier, the FT reported that the plant has purchased almost $280 million of oil that was transported on sanctions-listed vessels. But it looks like they might well be stopping. HMEL had already taken the decision to suspend further purchases of Russian crude oil upon recent announcements of new restrictions on imports of crude oil from Russia by the US, European Union, and the United Kingdom, the company said in a statement. According to the FT, the sanctioned vessels bearing oil from Russia brought them to the Gulf of Oman, where they passed them to a vessel that was not affected by US sanctions. The ships turned off their transponders, and one of the ships broadcast a false position to hide the process. HMEL said it was not aware of this situation. Yeah, how convenient. But anyway, shenanigans are going on with regard to what India is doing in the area of sanctions and sanctions evasion. After US sanctions, Lukoil is set to sell assets to a firm founded by a Putin ally. I've been wondering about this. They've been supposedly looking at divesting all sorts of interests around the world, Lukoil and Rosneft. The question is, well, how are they going to do this and who are they selling them to? And is this just going to be a case of getting around the sanctions by still kind of having connections to these entities and selling them to people who are adjacent to you, and money still swaps hands in ways that get around the sanctions? So Russian oil company Lukoil said on the 30th that it had reached a deal to sell its foreign assets to Gunvor, a company founded by an ally of President Vladimir Putin. Then we move on to an approximate estimate of the financial losses of the Russian aviation sector. So we've already been talking about this in 2025 due to the regular implementation of the COVA. So these are the carpet. It's called carpet. The protocol, the procedure whereby Russia closes airspace when there are drone attacks coming into Russia from Ukraine. They close their airports, called the carpet process, but it obviously costs. And this carpet plan during Ukrainian drone attacks based solely on open Russian sources could amount to about $1.6 to $2.4 billion of losses. Really significant. Over the first 8 months of 2025, restrictions due to Ukrainian drone attacks were introduced nearly 500 times at Russian airports, according to a summary based on RBC data as of early October. Indicative daily losses for airlines during a collapse similar to the one on the July the 5th, 6th mass closures at several key airports could cost airlines up to about $247 million per day. The estimate was published by Kommersant and later echoed by Forbes and Mail. Mail.ru Finance, for example, at St. Petersburg's Pulkovo Airport during the first wave of closures from July the 4th to 7th. Direct losses for Pulkovo amounted to $617,600 to $679,400. Total losses over the summer are estimated to be between $1.24 and $1.85 million, while airlines faced higher costs due to hotels, transfers, and passenger rebooking. On October, a series of simultaneous shutdowns occurred at 7 to 11 airports. Loads of airports get shut down on a regular basis. And actually, this is a really good point that the other day I was asking, what is the benefit for Ukraine to send drones and missiles, or drones particularly, towards actually missiles as well. There was that video footage of the Flamingo missile going towards Moscow. If it is a place with the best air defenses, why would you send your drones there to only get shot down? So lots of arguments here. One, the interceptors are expensive, often more expensive than the drones themselves. Two, it keeps those air defenses in the Moscow area and stops them being put elsewhere, maybe along the front line, maybe to other targets around Russia. So you need them to keep their air defenses there so that you can go and attack other places and not have good enough air defenses. So they keep attacking Moscow at least somewhat to keep those positions in place. But also, when you close down the airports, you're closing down Moscow airports, the most important airports in Russia. And not only do you get, compensation having to get paid, you've got hotels having to be paid out by the by insurance or by the airports or whatever. You stop business getting done, you stop tourism taking place, you stop movement around the country, and then that has knock-on effects for other airports, as flights then just get screwed up completely. And the point is, it's just incredibly expensive. So there are, and obviously also you're aiming for targets within Moscow as well. So there you go. There are lots of reasons to still continue to try and take out targets in the Moscow area. Local or short-term closures, 1 to 3 airports for 2 to 4 hours are estimated to cost airlines 1 to 3 billion rubles a day. That's 12.35 to 37.05 million dollars, and airports 5 to 30 million rubles, or 61 to 370,000 dollars, depending on traffic. So this is, and so on and so forth. You can go and look at more figures there. Just incredible. 1 out of the roughly 500 incidents over 10 months, only part were major days. So these are happening all the time, just consistently costing the aviation industry and the Russian economy, I would have thought, just huge amounts of money. Okay, now on to railways. So this is from Interfax. Russian railways net loss under Russian accounting standards for January to September 2025 amounted to 4.207 billion rubles, compared to a net profit of 44.7 billion rubles for the same period last year. So the Russian railways have gone from 44 billion ruble profit to 4 billion ruble loss. That is incredible. So compared to a net profit, net loss. It is 100% owned by the Russian government. Wow. Russian railways owned by the Russian government is costing the Russian government now rather than making a profit. Not just is this a problem kind of prima facie for the government in terms of losing money, but very importantly, it's a sign that the economy is not oiled, is not operating in the manner with which it needs to be operating for the Kremlin. If you aren't loading things onto the railways, if the railways aren't making money, your economy is screwed. So I think that's a really good sign for Ukraine, bad sign for Russia. Okay, now the Trump administration has quietly lifted sanctions, so we're still talking sanctions, on Wednesday against a Putin-backed Serbian leader, Milorad Dodik, after an intensive campaign on his behalf by Trump allies, including, who knew, General Flynn and Laura Loomer, real pro-Russision numbnuts, and Rudy Giuliani as well, and high-priced lobbyists. Wow, this is, just there's so much corruption in the American administration. It's staggering. But to lift sanctions on people so closely associated with the Russian, with the Kremlin, it is really, really annoying. Tom Nichols here says nothing in what Donald Trump says below here is correct. Russia's stockpile, nuclear stockpile, is larger than ours. Okay, so before we look at what Tom Nichols says, let's go to the original, which is Donald Trump saying, The United States, this is on Truth Social, has more nuclear weapons than any other country. This was accomplished, including a complete update and renovation of existing weapons during my first term in office. Because of the tremendous destructive power, I hated to do it, but I had no choice. Russia is second and China is a distant third, but we'll be even within 5 years. Because of other countries' testing programs, I've instructed the Department of War to start testing our nuclear weapons on an equal basis. That process will begin immediately. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. Tom Nichols says, nothing that he says here is correct. Russia's stockpile is larger than ours by a small margin. Trump did not create a larger stockpile by updating in his first term. No nation except North Korea has tested nuclear weapons since the 1990s. He's just lies. It's just absolutely incredible how much this man just gives bald-faced lies every single day. He is a lie machine. It is absolutely incredible. Anyway, Politico has reported that Hungary is actively working to form a Ukraine skeptic alliance with Czechia and Slovakia. Balázs Orbán, a key advisor to Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán, they're not related, by the way, said they aim to coordinate positions in the EU to reduce support for Ukraine. Despicable and indefensible, says no report. So Hungary is working explicitly against Ukraine here. This isn't, oh, we want peace. Oh, we want this, we want that, kind of dressing up their pro-Russian stance with kind of mealy-mouthed rhetoric and blah, blah, blah. No, this is, we are going to work explicitly against Ukraine. And the problem here is he wants to take Czechia and Slovakia with him. Vulnerable states already. Czechia, with their recent election, and Andrej Babiš in charge, is primed to change course and go against Ukraine. Really frustrating. Now, Baltic firms have exploited EU sanctions loopholes. I talked about this, I think, this morning or yesterday, to refuel Russia's shadow oil fleet 177 times in 9 months, according to an investigation. EU rules require due diligence for refueling vessels. Investigation found that safeguards routinely were bypassed while enforcement lags. The Baltics, I mean, the problem is that, unfortunately, morality plays a distant second fiddle to making money. And we saw this with the guy that went to Ukraine to be a military trainer, a British guy who, after a few months, started posting on Russian sites that he would take money to do sabotage and espionage on behalf of the Russians. It appears that the money does an awful lot of the talking in around the world. Of course it does. And sadly, even I bet if you ask many of the people involved in like sanctions loopholes and these big oil magnates and transport magnates, you ask them, do you support Russia? Do you support Ukraine? They'll probably say, no, I support Ukraine. Yeah, but you're making billions out of doing this. Yeah. I've got a wife to keep happy and children to put through private school, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it's just annoying. Police in Przemysl, probably pronounce that very badly, detained 2 local men aged 21 and 23 for tearing down the Ukrainian flag from the city's honorary consulate. Poland has recently seen a rise in anti-Ukrainian provocations, arson attacks, and verbal and physical assaults. Again, real shame there. Russian influence and anti-Ukraine influence is just pervading so much. It's a consistent challenge. Now, Latvia's security service says 4 people working for Russian intelligence have plotted arson attacks. One attack already happened in 2023, and another was stopped before it began. 3 suspects were detained. 1 was already in prison, officials say. So a number of different nations, coming up with, arresting people involved in sabotage and espionage. We've seen this in Poland, here Latvia. We've seen it in, I think, was it Germany recently? Also Romania too. So yeah, really need to, the EU and allies of Ukraine really need to keep their eyes peeled with regard to consistent espionage attempts by the Russian. Russians. Belgium's military facilities are being actively monitored by drones. Flocks of drones were spotted over an important military base. I reported that again this morning. They were spying on important information and critical infrastructure on the territory of the military facility, said the defense minister for Belgium. Multiple drones spotted above an army base. Now, I don't know whether Max 25 is being a bit like exaggerating here in talking about them in terms of flocks of drones, but anyway, drones are being spotted more and more over sensitive facilities right across Europe consistently. Now, Emmanuel Macron has warned that, he's obviously the French president, in case you didn't know, has warned that Russia is flooding Europe with fake social media accounts. Like, this is one of my bugbears. Really, really frustrated that the Europeans and the British and the Americans as well are just sitting back, it appears, and taking it, not really working proactively or even reactively to regulate social media, to get Russian influence out of our societies and out of our electoral processes. Quote, the biggest buyers of fake accounts on Twitter, on X and elsewhere are the Russians, who use them to destabilize European democracies. A formidable cocktail. I mean, I keep talking to you about this. I wonder if I can find it on Twitter now. There's this annoying, just so many of them. One I was looking at today, and every day she seems to pop up. I mean, it's clearly a Russian. I'm sure it's. I can't find it. It's someone called Jen K that just keeps coming up. This one keeps coming on my feeds, and this is one of these ones that I tell you is not a real person. Guaranteed, this is not a real person. I'm absolutely positive about this. Yeah, generally nice person, unless something or someone really winds me up. Reform UK, Brexiteer, wife, mother, and nanny. Love my family, right? But just everything. Look at this. Every day, it's these questions. Oh, sorry, you can't see this. So here it is. This is Jen K here. Yeah, British flag, English flag, yada 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 bio, typical. And then everyone, it's these questions that keep getting asked every day. What I don't get about inheritance tax, why? It doesn't seem right fair. Go woke or go broke. Refunds, energy bills, comfortable lifestyle. You know, all of these, every 100% of these are political attacks on the government, the Labour government at the moment. And 100%, this is a Russian troll, in my opinion, blue tick person. You know, I would like to ask Keir Starmer why he prioritizes people who are not from this country over his own people. Are Labour now a law unto themselves? Why don't this government blah blah blah? And one of the questions I keep seeing like all the time: does anyone else not recognise this country anymore? Stuff like this. Is this the most corrupt government you've ever seen? These questions like this, just, I mean, loads of people get on board with this and they absolutely love stuff like this. Yeah, who else feels this? I couldn't hate a government more than I do right now with this Labour government. Everything they're doing right now is to intentionally ruin this country. Who else feels like this? Yeah, everyone, like, you ask those questions, everyone like that. Yeah, I feel like that. Blah 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 blah. It's like, really, you hate Keir Starmer more than any other leader that's ever been. You know, Keir Starmer is so meh that I can't believe. So what's really interesting, I was listening to a analysis of this by the Rest is Politics, where there's been some research into like the polling, and Keir Starmer is at the moment something like -52. He's polling the worse than any British prime minister, I think, ever. And what's particularly worrying about that is that it doesn't correlate with what he's actually done. So when you look at the sort of things he's done and sort of scandals that have existed compared to other governments, it is, so the research suggested that it was completely over the top. So the idea that he's like by tens and tens and tens and tens of percentage points the worst prime minister this country's ever had type thing, it's just not true, right? And so what then explains why these surveys are so bad? And I speak to people all the time who like tell me stuff that they think about, like the government and Keir Starmer, like extended family members and people I meet. And it's like, so where have you got that information from? Okay, so invariably they're existing in these online information spaces, and they're existing, you know, speaking to people like Jen K on Twitter. And our views, we don't, like I keep telling you, we don't wake up in the morning with new information. Right, information comes from somewhere, and it will come from the television we watch, the people we speak to, the newspapers we read, and the online content we read and come across. And that last one is becoming more and more prevalent, and our polarization is being skewed by the online places in which we exist. But Russia is capitalizing on those online places. So Russia is creating, I would argue, just tons and tons and tons of blue tick Twitter bots and trolls. The same on Facebook, the same on, you know, in other places, threads. People are saying that Blue Sky is struggling more and more with trolls and bots and whatnot. And these are state actors that are nefariously getting involved in our heads, in our politics, in our elections, in our public discourse, and they are infecting us. And we need to do something about it, and we are simply not doing enough about it. And we are now going to talk a little bit about one perpetrator of these, I think, information crimes, I should say. So Macron is absolutely right. The biggest buyer of fake accounts on X and elsewhere are the Russians, who use them to destabilize European democracies, a formidable cocktail. Right, then we have this. So Elon Musk has come along and said, right, Wikipedia is too liberal. I'm going to make Grok. I've already got XAI, Grok AI. I'm going to make Grokopedia. I've got Grok AI, this AI model that initially was taking everything from the internet. Then it was too liberal because it turns out that the world is more liberal than I want it to be, says Elon Musk. So I'm going to retrain Grok. And then it was still too liberal, so retrained it, and he keeps retraining it. And although Grok admits that it's been retrained itself, here's a great example. This is a Finnish source saying, look, even Grok admits that pro-Russian content is boosted and pro-Ukraine content is being suppressed on X. You have surely noticed the surge of Russian propaganda on your feeds in recent weeks. Silencing the pro-Ukrainian voices is intentional sabotage. This is a quote from Grok. In 2025, evidence shows X restricts pro-Ukraine content and boosts pro-Russian narratives. Pro-Ukraine accounts report 50 to 90% reach drops, with factual posts, e.g. Ukrainian Foreign Ministry on child casualties, hidden or deboosted. ISD Global, Barclay Human Rights Center, for example. Pro-Russian content, including Kremlin accounts, sees 33 to 200% engagement increases, driven by bots, 33% success rate, and relaxed moderation, EU Commission AP News. Studies indicate 20 to 30% of war-related engagements favor Russian propaganda, amplified by coordinated networks. And I think these are sources in the brackets, actually, scientific reports, EPJ Data Science. So Grok admits that pro-Ukrainian stuff is deboosted on Twitter and pro-Russian stuff is massively boosted. So it's hugely biased. Twitter is biased. Then Grok is becoming more and more biased as it gets retrained and retrained because Elon Musk hates anything that's factual or liberal or both. So the Atlantic is many people are writing about the new Grokopedia. So he's decided that Wikipedia is as an open source encyclopedia is too liberal and he doesn't like it. And so he wants to make a very, very conservative alternative called Grokopedia. And he's released it and it is horrific, right? It is just horrible. It's full of, like, the stuff on Russia, it's just using the Kremlin as its factual source for the war in Ukraine. It's like, really? Like, that's going to give you a very biased pro-Russian outlook. Oh, you're fine with that. You're fine with it being biased and pro-Russian. Okay, fair enough. So Elon Musk's new competitor, says The Atlantic, or to Wikipedia, says apartheid wasn't that bad. It cites the Kremlin and gives legitimacy to white genocide theory. And there's an article here on how Musk is constructing a parallel universe in his image. entitled "What Elon Musk's version of Wikipedia thinks about Hitler, Putin, and apartheid." Hint: doesn't think that they're that bad. So Yoni Escola here says Americans and Europeans need to understand that the party Elon Musk is backing in Germany is pro-Russia and pro-China. Supporting the AfD goes against all US interests, goes against EU interests. So alongside all of this, like, let's create Grokopedia, let's create Grok AI, Elon Musk is still cheerleading for the AfD. This is only recently, he keeps saying stuff about how AfD is the only way to go. Mario Norfal here is a horrible source online that Elon Musk loves, says Germany's under 60s go AfD, boomers still hold the line. AfD is now polling at 26% ahead of the centre-right party CDU and absolutely steamrolling the left party SPD, who may need a GPS to find relevance. Under 60s all in on AfD, from frustrated Gen Z to blah blah blah. So then Elon Musk says only AfD can save Germany, and he keeps saying, you know, only reform can save, only Tommy Robinson can save the UK, and he's saying the similar stuff in the UK. Essentially, Elon, if you didn't know who Elon Musk was, right, and he saw the stuff he posted, you would think Elon Musk was himself a Russian troll with a blue tick. Like, he's just a Russian troll. So many media entities are writing about this Grokopedia, how it's really inaccurate. There are loads of plagiarism claims. So Jimmy Wales, if you don't know, is a guy behind Wikipedia. He warns Elon Musk's Grokopedia will make massive errors amid plagiarism claims. I did see one claim on Twitter, but I don't know if it's true, that there was a massive plagiarism lawsuit waiting for Musk, and he could lose billions in a lawsuit of plagiarism over Grok. But I don't know if that's true, so I'm going to hold back on sharing that with you formally. But just, it wouldn't surprise me if Wikipedia, because it appears that Grok is just nicking all of that content off Wikipedia, essentially, and then changing it and basically using that as a platform, and then conservatizing it, or whatever, far writing it. So old Clarence Starling is off his meds again. Elon Musk could have been the savior of the world, but instead he chose ketamine and bright orange racists and rapists and algorithmic terrorism. He will not be remembered fondly in the annals of history. Sorry, Freudian slip. Elon Musk here says civil war in Britain is inevitable, and he keeps saying stuff like this, just like he said, you know, Germany, AfD is the only chance for Germany, blah blah blah, all that kind of rubbish. Here, you know, only AfD can save Germany. Okay, a civil war in Britain is inevitable, just a question of when. There will be civil war. And then you go back to all of these kind of people like this Jen K, who I would put my mortgage on being a troll or a bot. And this is all of this rhetoric, just every single, I mean, this person is tweeting like 100, like, look, we're still only back to October the 28th here. Like, we're on October the 30th. So all of this is 2 days worth of tweeting on British politics, on slagging off Labour, on giving love to reform, right? And it is clear that there is this massive concerted effort to undermine British politics, and it's something which Elon Musk is a part of. Gadsad here, another one. Ugh, there will be civil war. No, there won't. And you hear this kind of rhetoric from people like Tim Pool, who said it for years. It's really typical of this kind of fringe right that is now becoming more than fringe and is becoming mainstream. And we're starting to see the seeping into real people's lives and real people's opinions that we are close to a civil war, or that Labour are that terrible, or that Keir Starmer is the worst human being on earth. It's like, no, he's not. He's a fairly decent man. Thank you very much. Just we are living in dangerous times, and we are being overtly manipulated. And Ed Davey, the leader in the UK of the Lib Dems, I think has this right.
Countries like Poland, Germany and France, we've seen evidence of dangerous Russian interference in their politics. Last month, the former leader of a major party in Wales pleaded guilty to taking bribes to make pro-Russian statements. The evidence shows Nathan Gill was a close confidant of the current Reform Party leader for years. So does the Prime Minister agree with me that it's time we had an in-depth investigation into Russian meddling and money in British politics?
Yes.
Joining his comments on Brunel scales, and on this question of Russian interference, it is a serious problem in countries across Europe, including in our country, where it's a constant threat. Mr. Speaker, for NATO allies, the conflict in Ukraine and dealing with Russian aggression is the #1 issue. And that is why I have to say the Reform Party would be an absolute disaster for our defence. We are a trusted member of NATO. We wouldn't be a trusted member if we were Putin friendly. We are leading the coalition of the willing, giving security and comfort to 30 other countries that will collapse under reform because they're Putin friendly, and it'd be a real threat to our defence and our security.
But he didn't answer the question, which is, are we going to have a report into Russian interference? I think we need to investigate Russian interference formally. I'd like to see the report on Russian interference in the Brexit referendum, which never seems to have been properly published.
Mr. Speaker, I'm grateful for the Prime Minister's reply, and I agree with him on Ukraine, but I do hope he will look at an investigation into this Russian interference in our politics.
Yeah, absolutely. Come on, answer the question. Will there be an investigation? Yes or no? I think there really needs to be one. Now, just a little bit, I'm going to have a tiny bit on reform, not really that much, but it's just, this is where Russian interference goes. So trying to champion reform and the Unite the Kingdom march and, get rid of all these boat people and everything like this. We have a lot of foreign-born nurses and doctors in the NHS in the UK, partly because we're trying to save money, and actually rather than train them up ourselves, we go abroad and nick them off other countries. That needs to stop, but it will lead to inflation. It will lead to a much more expensive NHS. But now racist incidents against UK nurses has surged by 55%. And it's just, this is the real world and kind of result of the influence, I think, that really divides our nations. It's happening in Germany, it's happening in the UK, it's happening right across Europe, and indeed in the United States, where nations are becoming more and more divided. And Putin and Xi Jinping, I'm sure, and North Korea and Iran, they are freaking loving it, because they are behind so much of the amplification of people's grievances. I keep talking about Brexit because I think it is pretty relevant at the moment. It's becoming more and more discussed. The World Trade Organization has now confirmed Brexit is doing what Remainers knew it would and more. UK trade has stagnated since Brexit. Good exports are 17% below pre-COVID, and the World Trade Organization names Brexit as a key cause. So that's interesting. WTO coming out and actually formally saying that Brexit is hurting us. Starmer's Brexit reset with the EU is forecast to claw back only 0.3% of the GDP against the 4% of GDP hit that Brexit has given us. So yeah, more needs to be done to sort out our economy, that's for sure. Now, I'm just going to play you this because I love this. I absolutely love this. This is really painful. This is happening in the United States as well. You have Donald Trump putting up signs saying this infrastructure project was that, Donald Trump, talks about the infrastructure project and then he said brought to you by Donald J. Trump, blah, blah, blah. But it's actually Joe Biden's infrastructure bill, and Trump is just putting his own boards on these projects and essentially lying and saying we did this. So all the good things that are happening right now that were actually a result of the 4 years of the Biden administration, Trump is trying to take the kudos for it, the plaudits for it. And there's this, it's just funny that this has happened as well in, I forget which council, Staffordshire County Council here in the UK. The Reform is now, I presume the council is now led by Reform, and Reform have come out and said, look what we've done in the first 100 days. We are this good. And then here's so this guy's a conservative councillor who's going to town on him saying, hang on, this was already in place previously. I just love this. So I'm going to play it to you because I can and I want to.
Delivery highlights. So adult social care services rated good by the CQC. Could you just confirm that the CQC inspection took place in February and March, so before the Reform administration took over the running of the council?
That's a good question. I'd have to come back to you on that one.
Well, it's factually correct. So that happened in February and March. So that is a success of the council, which we all celebrate. But it's not something that Reform had anything to do with. New flag protocol. Yep, that's absolutely Reform's. Launched Screen Staffordshire. So Screen Staffordshire launched in April 2024. So in what way is that a 100 days delivery highlight for your administration?
It's a highlight that's been put forward through this 100 days, so the achievement of it. That's all we're showing it there.
Okay, so it was launched a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
So in what way is it?
And it's been delivered now, so that's what we've finished with.
So it's not a delivery success for Reform. It's not a new initiative that Reform have brought forwards.
We've completed it within that 100-day period.
Okay, it was launched a year ago.
But it's been finished in the 100-day period.
It's a 3-year pilot.
Yes.
Launched a year ago.
And we've furthered that on in the 100 days.
So he just said he'd finished it.
And it's not been launched during the 100 days.
It's been launched, not within the 100 days, that's correct.
Okay. Achieved county gigabit coverage milestone. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the gigabit broadband programme, I lose track of this now. I think that began at least 5 years ago. I'd look to any officers who know the exact date. But it's at least 5 years ago. So that was achieved in June. So 5 years plus a few weeks of the new administration. So that's in the 100 days because...
Okay.
It's so cringe.
Yes, the 6 months earlier that the previous target, this represents gigabyte connectivity to more than 370,000 premises.
Yep.
So that's the milestone that we've achieved in that area.
That's fine. Thank you. Delivery highlight.
I love that. We've achieved that. What? You achieved that in 2 weeks and been going on for 5 years? You're having a laugh, mate. You are having a laugh. Anyway, this is the sort of stuff that is just so disingenuous. It is lies. It's lies. Right. Anyway, that's enough of that. Right. I'm going to talk to you about one of the main topics of this video now, which is the Xi Jinping and Donald Trump meeting in, I think it was in South Korea, wasn't it? This is a fairly good point here. You know, concentrate on little things. President Xi of China humiliates Donald Trump with a very obvious cold reception. Trump awkwardly tries to force "we have a great relationship" several times, but an icy Xi refuses to play along. This is a complete embarrassment on the world stage. Now, I don't know if I go that far, but it is an interesting handshake and...
Mr. President, the President of the People's Republic of China.
Good to meet you. Great pleasure to see you again.
Good to see you again.
Watching family good behind me? Me too.
And we're going to have a very successful meeting, I have no doubt. But he's a very tough negotiator. That's not good. We know each other well.
Mr. President, do you plan to sign a trade deal today?
I absolutely love that. It's like, we know each other well. All smiles. Yeah. He's just cold-faced. Absolutely cold-faced. Just, pretty cringe-worthy moment, I think that was. Right. So what happened here? I don't know massive amounts about this because I've had my head in other places, but from what I can work out, it's been a bit of both sides have backed down a little bit because it was just too expensive, literally expensive. In fact, there was a claim that Scott Bessant had asked Trump to back down on stuff because the trade war with China was costing the US too much money. I think Trump has tried to make this look like a win, but it looks like China was probably in a power position previously and probably remains in a power position now. The art of letting Trump claim a win while walking away stronger. That is an interesting way of summing this up. So she has allowed Trump to go back and claim a win, but Xi Jinping appears to be in a stronger position than he was. By withholding soybean purchases and rare earth exports, China extracted relief from the US tariffs and delayed export controls without conceding much in return. So when Xi Jinping walked out of I've not shared this. So this is a New York Times. The art of letting Trump claim a win while walking away stronger. Okay, so when Xi Jinping walked out of his meeting with President Trump on Thursday, he projected the confidence of a powerful leader who could make Washington blink. The outcome of the talks suggested that he succeeded. By flexing China's near monopoly on rare earths and its purchasing power over US soybeans, Mr. Xi won key concessions from Washington: a reduction in tariffs, a suspension of port fees on Chinese ships, and a delay of US export controls that would have barred more Chinese firms from accessing American technology. Both sides also agreed to extend a truce struck earlier this year to limit tariffs. Quote, what's clear is that they have become increasingly bold in exerting leverage and they are happy to pocket any and all US concessions, said Julian Gewertz, who was a senior China policy official in the White House and the State Department in President Joseph R. Biden's Jr.'s administration. Sounding almost like he was delivering a lecture, Mr. Xi said to Mr. Trump that the recent twists and turns of the trade war should be instructive to them both, according to the Chinese government summary of Mr. Xi's remarks at the meeting in Busan, South Korea. At the same time, train to Busan. At the same time, Mr. Xi also seemed to grasp what Mr. Trump needed: a deal that he could sell as a victory at home. The outcome allowed Mr. Trump to claim a win for American farmers and companies, even though China had largely restored the status quo by agreeing to buy soybeans and to hold off on further restricting the export of rare earths. Mr. Trump pumped a fist in the air as he boarded Air Force One. He said on the plane that Mr. Xi had agreed to take more action to stop the flow of chemicals used to make fentanyl from reaching the United States. He also said China promised to purchase more US soybeans. Quote, our farmers will be very happy, he posted on Truth Social afterwards. I would like to thank President Xi for this. After the two leaders met, China's Ministry of Commerce said in a statement that it would suspend for 1 year the restrictions on rare earths that were announced in October. The ministry made no mention of earlier controls announced in April. Separately, Mr. Trump said he would cut in half the 20% tariffs he had imposed on Chinese goods to pressure China to do more to stop fentanyl trafficking. The reduction amounted to on Thursday brings overall tariffs on Chinese goods to around 47% from 57%. So still massive tariffs on, right? It's still really painful. The Chinese Commerce Ministry also said the two sides had agreed on a 1-year extension of a truce to limit additional tariffs that were originally set to expire on November the 10th. Some experts said China inevitably had the upper hand in the trade fight because the Trump administration never had a clear objective. It's a really interesting point, this, because the trade war that Trump has started with the whole world appears to be kind of ill thought out and lacking in clear objectives. The trade war, he initially claimed these were reciprocal tariffs, and then we worked out on Liberation Day, when the numbers were so weird, that was based on whether you had a trade surplus, in which case it was a 10% tariff. So if the US had a trade surplus with the nation, and if it's a trade deficit, then the tariffs would be correlated to the size of the trade deficit. But what are you trying to do with this? Are you just trying to onshore all of the manufacturing? But what if there are particular things that you can't manufacture, or you can't, like certain crops that are grown in places where you can't grow them in the US, or certain shellfish, or certain, natural resources that you literally can't get in the United States? You can't onshore that. So why are you putting tariffs on these things? So it is just really ill thought out. Just to finish here, because then the Guardian has a little bit on the ill thought outness of them. So I think, quote, I think it's an approach that can safely be described as tactics without a strategy. Tactics without a strategy is such a good appraisal of this, said Jonathan Shin, a fellow at the Brookings Institution who previously analysed Chinese politics at the CIA. Quote, ostensibly the goal was to address some of the meaty trade issues that had long bedeviled the relationship. Instead, the PRC, China side, has successfully orchestrated a game of whack-a-mole for the Trump administration, Mr. Shin said, using the abbreviation for the People's Republic of China. Yeah, okay. So I think the end result is that that China is still in a pretty useful position. The Guardian analysis says Xi-Trump meeting America has discovered that bullies can be bullied back. So much about the trade wars that the US has started with every other nation on earth appears to be the US flexing its muscles and being a bully. I've talked to you many times about this looking like playground bully behavior. The outcome appears closer to a truce than a durable peace, but outline of a broader diplomatic relationship is visible. So Trump rated, so he said that he gave the meeting with Xi Jinping a 12 out of 10. Both sides have taken some of their biggest guns off the table, but this appears closer to a truce than a durable peace, setting stable boundaries for China's relations with the US. Nevertheless, the outline of a broader long-term diplomatic relationship is visible, with announced reciprocal visits by each leader within a year. This is very different to what China hawks in Congress were hoping when Trump came to power, and will set alarm bells off on both sides of the aisle. So, you know, he was supposed to be the guy that was going to be super strong on China, and he's gone to try, meet with Xi Jinping. He's got a few things achieved, but come back with his tail between his legs, where the situation is actually worse than it was before he took control. We'll come to that in a second. One of the difficulties has been Trump's strategic objectives in launching the trade war were not articulated. That's the point the New York Times was making. One of the difficulties has been Trump's strategic objectives in launching the trade war were not articulated. They're just like, why are you doing this? The balance between protecting traditional US manufacturing, ring-fencing modern technology-based industries critical to US national security, punishing Chinese trade practices, or more broadly, generally overpowering China as a competitive threat were fudged. Gradually, the battle morphed in some US administration minds from a trade war into a geopolitical trial of strength between the two world superpowers, a trial that left the whole world awaiting its outcome. I think that's just a really good paragraph there that I think sums the whole thing up. Much of it amounts to a return to the status quo, as it says later. China has agreed to defer for at least a year, potentially crippling new restrictions on the export of rare earth materials. China will once again buy US soybeans. Beijing has agreed to do more to control the export of precursor chemicals used to make fentanyl, the synthetic opioid, as already mentioned in the New York Times, and has triggered a crisis of overdose deaths in North America and the supposed cause of 20% tariffs. In return, Trump has agreed to halve the 20% levy, taking the average US tariffs down to 45%, still higher than India. He has also suspended expanded restrictions to export controls. Trump, on the plane home from South Korea, was evasive about the US role in loosening license applications for shipments of NVIDIA's artificial intelligence chips to China, saying the subject of the new most powerful chip, the Blackwell, did not come up, and it was a matter for China and NVIDIA. National security hawks in Washington will be watching. The terms for the Chinese firm ByteDance's divestment of TikTok America will be announced separately, where surely loads of Republicans are going to get on the board of the new TikTok, including the size of ByteDance's continuing stake, the control of the algorithm. On Trump's accounts, fears that he was about to abandon Taiwan were also misplaced. The subject did not feature, he said, implausibly. They did mention, well, Trump mentioned that Ukraine was talked about a lot, but there's been no talk about Ukraine, particularly as far as I can see in the analyses. By one account, the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, examining the imminence of the precipice, persuaded Trump that the price of confrontation was proving too high, leading the two sides to the mutual withdrawal this week. The truce is only for a year, but that may be to China's advantage. It buys Xi time to push China further ahead in the technologies of the future, including green technology and manufacturing, the field it now dominates, and the centerpiece of the new 5-year economic plan. Okay, so this next paragraph is super important because China is muscling in places where you wouldn't have expected them to previously, because those places like Europe, arguably, South America as well, would otherwise be much more aligned to the United States or certain areas of South America. But Trump has come along and fudged, to use that term, has fudged the relationships that the US has worked really hard to foster again in the last 4 years after Trump 1.0 and prior to that under Obama. like these international relationships that saw America, working really closely with other nations. Now Trump has come along and fudged it, and that gives China this opportunity to come in and say, hey, we're more reliable than the United States. How about you work with us? So the last paragraph is important. Equally importantly, China hopes it will be seen by other countries as the responsible and restrained global power, not seeking confrontation, but strong enough to withstand US coercion. At a minimum, the clash in leadership cultures is total. Xi is an exponent of the war of position, and Trump the war of maneuver, in which instinct triumphs over consistency or strategy. For the moment, the positional warrior is winning, or at least not losing. In other words, both newspapers here think that China have come out the better here, and that Trump was never going to win, couldn't win this kind of power struggle and this trade war with China. So Chris Murphy, the Connecticut senator here, says Trump bungled China policy so bad he had to run to Xi to beg forgiveness and surrender. Everyone knows it. In the deal, America gets nothing, not even a return to status quo. Trump has now totally abandoned the promise to get tough on China. And that is definitely true at the end. Like, there is no getting tough on China when he's saying, hey, we get on really well. He's all smiling. Xi Jinping is one being tough, not smiling at all in that photo opportunity. And the US appears to be worse off than it was prior to the Trump administration, a point which the Tennessee Holler here makes. Trump is boasting China will buy a tremendous amount of soybeans. So Trump is coming out saying, hey, China's going to buy a tremendous amount of soybeans now, 25 metric tons per year. The reality is that is less than 2024, where they were buying 27 metric tons. So he's counting on you not knowing that. Yes, it's better than zero. Yes, farmers need it, but putting out another fire he started does not a hero make. So the idea is that, hey, they're buying loads of stuff off us, yeah, but not as much as they were previously, and not as much as prior to that. And so, how are you selling this as a win? Because you started them off with not buying anything. They're doing very well, thank you. So it's that kind of, we're going to ration you your chocolate 50%, and then a few weeks later we're going to give you back 25%, and everyone goes, yeah, you're amazing, you're giving us 25% of rationing back. Yeah, but you took 50% off previously. So selling it as a win there. Now this is all part of an Asian tour that he was doing that was all kind of weird. Japan's new prime minister, and if you want to see another cringe video, go and watch Japan's prime minister ushering Trump around the hall looking confused and not knowing where he's supposed to be going, and then saluting the Japanese flag. It's just completely weird. Trump, some people are saying, in fact, I'll probably talk about this a little bit, we've got a little bit of time. Japan's new prime minister, Sane Takaichi, so she's a new kind of people are talking about Margaret Thatcher because, hey, she's a woman and conservative, so therefore must be like Margaret Thatcher. But anyway, this kind of Thatcher-esque leader that's taken over in Japan, she told Donald Trump during their meeting in Tokyo that banning Russian liquefied natural gas imports would be difficult, says Reuters. Russian supplies account for nearly 9% of Japan's total LNG imports. Of course, the US keeps going around the world very cannily here saying, you need to stop buying Russian gas. Oh, by the way, we do LNG. Did you know that? You need to stop buying Russian gas. Oh, we can sell you some of that, actually. And you're thinking it's not so much about trying to punish Russia, but more about trying to get a trade win for the United States. Okay, fair enough, but there you go. And so, yeah, Trump was seen at the airport, was this Indonesia's airport, where he was met by sort of these dancing musicians, and I forget where I need to find where it is. Yeah, here. So this is how the media shows Trump, turning up in Indonesia. But actually, there were some pretty sizable protests in, it's Malaysia, not Indonesia, Malaysia. Pretty sizable protests there. A lot of it to do, I believe, with sort of Palestine and the US's support of Israel, and sort of Islam there playing that connecting role. So yeah, just I thought it was interesting juxtaposition there. What else is there to say? Yeah, pretty much I can leave it there with the geopolitics. I won't go on to that. I do want to say I just saw a post on Blue Sky by Jiggers Paul. Our fundraiser with the Drone Lab with Jonathan M.S. Pierce is finished. So ATP Geopolitics, thanks to ATPGEO and his incredible community. That's you guys. You, I can see you there. That's you. You're incredible. You are. And his incredible community. We raised $17,912. This is the campaign just before the Car for Ukraine one that we've just completed. By the way, thank you, Michael Winkler, for helping out with a massive donation at the end, still going on that one. These funds were used to supply Drone Lab with the components for assembling 49 reusable FPV bombers. So these are reusable drones for our hero Dan from the 47th Brigade. So that's absolutely fantastic. You guys are just tremendous. Thank you for your assistance with that. I want to, yeah, I did show you some photos from of some of the components that were bought then, but I'll probably have to hunt those out and find them again. I'm just going to talk about this just very quickly. This is Donald Trump on a plane the other night, where he loves to have a chat.
They have Jasmine Crockett, a low IQ person. They have AOC's low IQ. You give her an IQ test, have her pass like the exams that I decided to take.
So this is really cringe. Like, if people knew what he's talking about like basically a sort of dementia test. He keeps saying he aced this test. It was like, what animal is this? It's a freaking elephant. Like, say these 5 words. Like, I'm going to say 5 words now, send them back to me. So like, I went with my dad recently to a dementia test. Actually, I wasn't in there for the test. I couldn't be in there for the test. But the sort of questions he was asked appeared to be exactly what my dad was asked. And the question is, well, why are you being asked those questions? Why are you being given like a dementia test? And why are you saying that your IQ is better than Jasmine Crockett, who's like a past the bar attorney? Right, she's got her wits about her in a way that I don't think you do, and AOC as well is really on it. Like, those are two. It's interesting that he always calls out, and Jasmine Crockett was asked this the other day by Jimmy Kimmel. What's the commonality of the people he calls out for having low IQ? Turns out they're always women, and they're always women of color, it appears. So he's very particular about who he calls out for having the low IQ. But the hilarious thing is that your IQ, I don't think is all that, mate. I think that you would lose out any kind of cognitive test to those two quite brilliant politicians here. But anyway, more importantly, there was this admission.
When I was at Walter Reed, those are very hard. They're really aptitude tests, I guess, in a certain way, but they're cognitive tests. Let AOC go against Trump. Let Jasmine go against Trump. I don't think Jasmine, the first couple of questions are easy. A tiger, an elephant, a giraffe, When you get up to about 5 or 6, and then when you get up to 10 and 20 and 25, they couldn't come close to answering any of those questions.
How do you know they couldn't come close to answering any of those questions? What are you talking about? Anyway, it turns out that I thought it was in that clip, but it's not. It turns out that he admitted to having an MRI scan in this on the plane, and he said his MRI was perfect. And this is really interesting because he said he was at Walter Reed. So remember, I did a number of videos when he went AWOL for the best part of the week, right? And Melania Trump was seen in Walter Reed Medical Center, and he was looking ill. Some saying that he had been hit on the head, some saying he'd had a fall, some saying that this, that, all these different theories, some talking about having mini strokes, and all these theories are out there. But he certainly went AWOL for the best part of the week, right? And didn't appear to be very well. And he's been bumbling around with a lot of his speech, I think, well, for the best part of his second tenure. It turns out that he actually, well, I'm guessing he had an MRI scan at that time, right? I have MRI scans. I had one quite recently, actually, and I had another one just before that for my head and neck. And the reason I do is because I'm not very well. You don't get sent to have an MRI unless there is a concern about you, unless they want to diagnose something or see if something about you has got worse. So if you have an MRI on your brain, right, it's trying to see whether something you have has got worse or whether you have something like dementia, like multiple sclerosis. That's what I have. And they measure whether I have lesions on my brain or whether my lesions have got bigger, etc., right? You don't just go and have an MRI just for shits and giggles, right? It doesn't happen. You're like, oh, do you know what? While I'm here, I'll have an MRI, thanks. I'll have an MRI, a pint, and then I'll have a club sandwich, and then I'll have another MRI, but just in my ankles, please. Thank you very much. Because why not? Because I'm here. Hey, it's MRI time. No, you get sent to, if you're the president and you've got a booked out agenda, timetable, you don't get sent to Walter Reed Medical Facility for an MRI just for a laugh, right? So this is an admission from Trump that he is not well, to the point where people around him have said, his doctors have said, you need to have an MRI. If they're saying he needs an MRI, he is not well, or he is exhibiting behaviors or symptoms of not being well. Anyway, Trump, AOC's low IQ, blah, 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 ace those cognitive tests, blah, 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 blah. And Sarah McGee says, hi, imaging professional here. We use serial MRIs to monitor the progression of Alzheimer's. Carry on. So, you know, why did he have an MRI? Is it because he had, there are people who are concerned that he has Alzheimer's. This is Dr. Jonathan Reiner, Dick Cheney's former cardiologist.
Medical analyst, Dr. Jonathan Reiner. Most of us do not get an MRI as part of a normal physical. Aren't they typically used to detect things like strokes and aneurysms and tumors? I mean, do you have any clues as to why the president would have gotten an MRI?
It's not part of a routine screening. There's been really a lack of candor. The big question is what prompted his MRI? So what symptoms were they concerned about? What particular type of MRI was performed? Was it a brain MRI? Was it a cardiac MRI? Was it an MRI of the spine, of his prostate? What prompted a concern that would take him in a relatively unscheduled way to Walter Reed for this testing? Why didn't they tell us that? Didn't they disclose that he was tested when Dr. Barbarella issued his report after the president's visit? And now, why won't they tell us exactly why the testing was performed and the results? I think without that, then there's really no trust.
I completely agree. And then you're thinking, you probably do need to get checked out because you're saying stupid things. Here's Trump, and someone might have started saying 25th Amendment. So this is, you replace him because you're not well. But then you get JD Vance. But anyway, the Biden, I said this the other day, but I'm going to repeat it. The Biden FBI placed 274 agents into the crowd on January the 6th, said Donald J. Trump. If this is so, which it is, a lot of very good people will be owed big apologies. What a scam. Do something, President DJT. Do you know who was the president during January the 6th and why impeachments and investigations took place? Because you were the president, Trump. You were the president and you didn't call back the insurrectionists. That's why people are angry with you over that. They then broke into the Capitol, smeared their own feces on the wall and went through people's offices and files and caused all sorts of problems, right? And there was violence. You didn't call them back. So the Biden FBI placed 274 agents into the crowd. Who is writing this? If you wrote this, you're an idiot and you need an MRI. And if it's your aides, they're idiots and they need an MRI. Just honestly, just such idiocy. Mehdi Hassan says, the previous one said Trump was president on January 6th, 2021. What a moron. Yes, Mehdi Hassan says the most astonishing part of the MAGA cult is that even when Trump says something totally mad and demonstrably false, it was his FBI on January the 6th, not Biden's. His followers still share his statements as there's something amazing. instead of being embarrassed or hiding them. So Benny Johnson here. In a late night post, President Trump says 274 FBI agents were placed into the crowd on January the 6th and says, do something. Oh, Benny Johnson. Yeah, Benny Johnson. You idiot, Benny Johnson. Can't you see that you're an idiot as much as Trump is there? Because you're just regurgitating demonstrably false BS from your dear leader. Imagine wanting to... Okay. So then Trump, and I think this is from, is it yesterday or today even? You might have said this today. Donald Trump says on True Social about Joe Biden, who's got stage 4 cancer, by the way, and was a decent human being, Joe Biden. I don't think even those who don't like Democrats, you can't look at him and go, oh, he was an evil so-and-so and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, he's a criminal and should be in jail, all caps, a major lowlife and failure. An ugly person, both inside and out. I beat him badly and love watching him squirm now. Ed Kresenstein says, imagine wanting to jail an 82-year-old former president who's battling stage 4 cancer, even though there is absolutely no evidence of any crimes, and then to brag about enjoying watching him squirm. Trump is such a pure Christian, isn't he? Jesus would be proud. Yeah, absolutely. Goodness. Right, I'm going to leave it with this, I think. Maybe a few more things. The Senate has voted 52 to 48 to overturn Trump's 50% tariffs on Brazil. So his tariffs, it should be the Congress that put tariffs on. Arguably, his tariffs are illegal. There are some, I think there's not been a court ruling along these lines as well. 5 Republicans joined Democrats in supporting the measure. Mitch McConnell, Rand Paul, Tom Tillis, Susan Collins, and Lisa Murkowski. That's pretty bad news for Trump. So I don't know what this means, whether it means that actually the tariffs on Brazil will be taken back. But yeah, something to watch out for. So the US Navy lost another 2 aircraft. So this happened previously in the Red Sea when one of their aircrafts did a sharp left turn and they lost a couple of, I think this happened twice. They lost 2 F-18 Hornets over the side, didn't they? Now, the other day, USS Nimitz, one of the more aging aircraft carriers, there was a plane and a helicopter that were lost within 30 minutes of each other. I'm not quite sure what happened here because Combat Veteran Reacts was claiming that China might have had something to do with the electronic warfare. I don't think this is the case, but there are lots of questions that need answering there. That you would lose 2 aircraft so close to each other. Some are saying that they maybe clipped each other or something. Anyway, Pete Hegseth can go on TV all he wants, so the Secretary of War, about military strength, but 2 aircraft just went overboard from USS Nimitz in 30 minutes. He must explain why our Navy's readiness keeps slipping on his watch. Interesting. And he's also said stuff like he doesn't want to speak to anyone with a beard. So where Pete Hegseth went recently, because part of he gave that speech, didn't he, in front of all the assembled commanders, and then Trump did too. One of the things he said is, I don't want facial hair on our soldiers or whatever. So now everyone's got to shave. You can get exemptions. Black service members represent roughly 15% to 16% of active duty force, and yet they account for 66% of those holding shaving waivers. So this is overwhelmingly going to affect him seeing black people, maybe, is I think the point here. So Hegseth refuses to meet US troops with beards during the South Korean trip, according to a report from The Independent there and others. Pretty odd that. Okay. I'm going to leave it there, actually, because the rest goes on to talking about ICE and all sorts, bits and pieces. Okay, let's get back to the live chat and see how you peeps are. Thank you very, very much to Michael Vuchar. So Michael, who likes his China topics, he often talks about the fourth plenum. The fourth plenum is the meeting of the Communist Party in China and deciding what their sort of 5-year plan is going to be and whatnot. And actually, I did have this to share with you. Just a little look through. Thank you for your ATP Geopolitics membership gifts. Thank you. Really, really appreciated. China's leaders meeting confirms Xi's authority and shows technological self-reliance is now the priority. So looking at domestic economic robustness, economic priorities shifting, there was a big purge of the military, and I think it was in favor of showing where is it? Yes, it also appointed General Zhang Shengmin as a new vice chair of the Central Military Commission. His elevation to this new position illustrates that President Xi will continue to place his campaign against corruption at the heart of the senior PLA leadership, so it's the army. None of the dismissals or changes came as a surprise. Most have been announced in advance, but the sheer scale of the reshuffle once again underscored President Xi's unchallenged authority at the top of China's political hierarchy. I mean, there were some that were talking about how the fourth plenum could be a real challenge for Xi Jinping, but I don't know if it has ended up being that. But I'm no expert on that, so I could well be wrong on that. But it seems like it's a lot to do with a 5-year plan, economic plan, 15-year plan, and whatnot. But I think he seems to be fairly safe, I think. Okay, Julian Roster, thank you very much. I read that there is evidence that Russia meddled in the Scottish referendum back in 2014. They've been at this for decades. I mean, the return on investment they get for what they spend on information warfare is just incredible. Incredible. Thank you, Julian, by the way. But yeah, we need to, in the UK and in Europe and in the US, but of course they won't because it works to Trump's favor and the Republicans' favor. But we need to investigate Russian influence in UK society, and we need to regulate the crap out of Twitter and other places and Facebook. But the problem is the amount of money these guys actually I'll leave you on this before I get back to the rest of the super chats. This I think is really important. So I talked to you the other day about yes, I talked to you about the commutations and pardons. I did a whole video on pardons and commuting sentences. And one of the people who had their sentence commuted was the guy who founded Binance, the Binance owner, who is Changpeng. Is that right? Or I forget his name. I wonder if it's here. Anyway, 1 week after Trump pardoned Binance's owner for a stunning array of crimes related to terrorist and sex predator financing, Binance starts promoting Trump crypto. The White House is a full-time 24/7 corruption machine. Binance here, deposits for USD1 are open on Binance US, blah, 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 blah. So he's trying to get Trump's crypto there, platforms on Binance. And then this was actually older. So Trump previously had written, "Happy Crypto Week. The House will soon vote on a tremendous bill to make America the undisputed #1 leader in digital assets. Nobody does it better. The Genius Act is going to put our great nation light years ahead of China, Europe, and all others who are trying endlessly to catch up, but they just can't do it. Digital assets are the future. We are leading by a lot. Get the first vote done this afternoon. All Republicans should vote yes. This is our moment. Digital assets, genius clarity. It is all part bigger and better than ever before. We are leading the world and will work hard with the Senate and the House to get even more legislation on this passed." And this source says the president, who owns a crypto company and personally profits from it, is using his official position to pressure Congress to vote for a bill that will personally make him more money and shield him from accountability. That is what a corrupt oligarchy looks like. And there's more. Chris Murphy here again says, here's an example of how Trump's corruption factory works. Coinbase put $46 million into elections to help Trump allies. 2, sends him a huge check for his inauguration. So this is Coinbase. 3, Trump drops an SEC lawsuit against Coinbase. 4, Trump demands a big donation from Coinbase for the ballroom. Done. So that $300 million ballroom that he's getting built, apparently not using taxpayer money, that's because he's extracting money from people who have done him favors, quid quo pro. Coinbase get an SEC lawsuit dropped. They've already paid into his inauguration. They've already paid to get Republicans elected. It's just all corruption. The whole thing is corruption. It doesn't end there. The Pentagon somehow determined that the best supply available for drone parts just happened to be the one that had one of the president's son on its board. Sarah Longwell from the Bulwark says, it will shock you to learn that the people who talk for years about Hunter Biden have nothing to say about the rampant self-dealing of the Trump sons, Jared Kushner, and of course Trump himself, which is at a scale so incomprehensible and brazen, it apparently warrants no notice. And I'll leave you with this. Trump Organization's income in the first half of 2024 was 51 million. So this is Trump Organization. This is his own organization. In the first half of 2024, 51 million. In the first half of 2025, when he is president, Trump Organization's income rose to 864 million. Someone else can work out the percentage there, but I think it comes under the umbrella term of a hell of a lot. A massive percentage came from foreigners. It should be the biggest scandal in the history of American politics, but few even care. And we go back to Sarah Longwell, who says it so beautifully here. Scale so incomprehensible and brazen, it apparently warrants no notice. I can't tell you how corrupt the American administration is. Richard Demi, thank you so much for gifting ATP Geopolitics memberships. You legend, you. Thank you. And lovely mods make it so nice to be here in the comments section. Much love for those hardworking, much put upon legends. And that is true. Thank you very much to the mods for making this place a nice place to hang out. Thank you, Lag Monster, for recognizing that and for the props you gave. Heidi High V3C says they need to scan Trump's bum to find his brain. I think that would be very sensible. Michael Lanning got my third CT scan. We're talking about scans tomorrow for suspected lung cancer. Dude, all the best for that. I hope you get the result that you want. Oh, did you see them in person? Is that when they went to Canada? Love the Bulwark. Wish I saw them. They came to Canada recently and they had to get another, I think they had to book another room because they had to do 2 nights because it was so popular. I don't know what you mean now. I think I need to read my Facebook page messages to gather what you're talking about there. I'll have a look, Michael. And just, yeah, so on Michael Lamming, dude, I hope it goes well. I've got a biopsy for my prostate on the 5th. You know, now we're talking about, you know, let's talk about men's health. We don't talk about enough, but, you know, women as well, obviously. I've got a biopsy on the 5th of November. So that's when they're going to find out whether it's cancerous or what. So I need to have the right result there. So, you know, I'll be looking to the stars, hoping the stars align for that one. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody, for your support. Really appreciate it. I hope you all are well. Thank you for being in the live chat so consistently in good humor and good faith. It really does mean a lot. And it's a pleasant place for people to hang out. And hopefully, you know, you are creating online friendships to the degree you can in a YouTube video live feed. And that's pretty cool. Take care of yourselves, and I will speak to you soon. Toodle pips, Slava Ukraini. I can't do it now. Don't, Wizard, why have you just done that? I was just pressing stop, right? And you do this. The term you're looking for was a shit ton of egregious grift. This is indeed one of the terms I was looking for. Back in Blighty, so you can catch you at a reasonable hour now. Nice one. Welcome home. Welcome to the center of the empire, or something controversial. But yes, thank you guys. Thank you everyone. Take care, y'all, and I'll speak to you soon. My long goodbye. This is exactly what I do. Just stop talking to me and stop being nice. See you later.